It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means, don't you? It's time for another exciting episode of TAXITV Live. Good timing, huh? Now that's radio production. I'd like to welcome our special guest today, Mr. Rob Chiarelli. Woo. Yeah, baby.
All right.
Yeah. So, Rob always gets embarrassed. Normally, I'd read off his bio, and he sits
No, don't do it.
I'm not. I didn't even print it out today.
Go.
I did you a favor. Let's just say Rob has a lot of gold and platinum records with very, very big artists to his name. And what else does Rob do? Yeah, that's broke. That mouse pad is as old as the company. It's 33 years old.
Nice.
Anyway, and 5 Grammys. Count them on one hand. 5 Grammys.
Jesus.
Anyway, yeah, he gets embarrassed by this stuff. You should be proud of it.
I am. I'm proud.
Okay.
It's all good. You know, it's awkward.
I know. Take a bow.
Who's there?
Let's see. Yep. Well,
oh, my God. Jonathan Sanson. Nice sweatshirt. Yes. There he is.
Rob and I talked on the phone a couple hours ago. He goes, "You're not wearing your Miami sweatshirt." We both have the same sweatshirt. Yeah, we both went to University of Miami. But
I want a taxi shirt. Do you have one for me?
I don't. I will get you one.
Get me one.
I will get you one.
I want the hoodie, though. I want the hoodie.
All right. What size?
Extra large.
Okay, that's what
I like them loose.
Me too. Anyway,
all right.
Rob is my oldest, dearest friend in the world. We've known each other for decades. And he moved out here in 88 or 89.
89.
Shortly after I moved out here. And he called me up and goes, "Can you get me any interviews at recording studios?" He ended up getting himself an interview at Paramount Studios.
And Wildcat was the other one. And
but not Paramount, like Paramount the movie studio. Yeah. And anyway, it was a very famous, primarily hip-hop studio. Is that a fair statement?
Well, it was starting to become that way at the time. Sure was.
And had like SSL number 2 in it, right?
Yeah, it had an old B-series SSL.
Did it have actual faders or rotary buttons?
It had a rotary. It had a rotary switch to do the bussing. Yeah.
Wow.
It sounded good. It was dark, but it sounded really good.
And
warm, I should say, not dark.
That's right.
Warm.
And I mean, here he is, 30 years later.
We still like each other.
We do. We went out to dinner Thursday night of last week and spent like 3.5 hours at dinner.
Talking shop.
We were. And I said to him, we should have just done the show now, because I love having Rob on here because I can talk about the stuff we would talk about at dinner, and you guys seem to enjoy it. We're going to open it up to... Rob's not a New Yorker, actually, Ken. Rob is from Boston.
Oh, no. Do not confuse me with a Yankees fan.
Yeah.
That's a no bueno.
Or any sort of football fan that doesn't love the Patriots.
That's right.
Also
Patriots,
a no bueno. Anyway, right. Rob also owns a software company called Final Mix, and he is giving away... There we go. One of these today. He was telling me about it at dinner the other night.
Well, not one of these, like however.
Well, everybody in the audience gets one of these. But for those of you who are watching, how late does this go till? Midnight?
No, I'm letting it go till 6 a.m. I'm sorry. It opened up minutes ago, and it's going to go till 6 p.m. ish. Okay, I can't let it go forever.
Right.
And you can imagine why the code gets shared.
Right.
And the next thing I know, 10,000 free downloads across the world.
So this is only for you guys viewing the show. Live. If you're watching the archives, I'm sorry. And please don't call my staff and say, "Oh, our babysitter flaked out. I couldn't do it," whatever. I'm so sorry. But no, the staff doesn't have the ability to create a new code. And I'm not going to call Rob at 10:30 at night tonight and say, "Can you create one more code for this one guy whose babysitter didn't show?" So I'm really sorry. You got to be watching the live show. But I said
to get the free one. But I got.
Yeah, you can buy it.
No. I'm giving the free 50% off after the show for quite a while. Wow. So if you missed it, I don't want to be a total, jerk. We're gonna open up a 50% off for everybody. So even people.
Wow.
All right.
And it's already cheap as snot. I mean, to buy it, it's like $24.95 or something.
$24 flat.
Yeah. And okay. So tell me now. this show isn't about this thing, but as long as we're on the subject, let's talk about it, because Rob was talking about it at dinner the other night. He said spent more time in development and worked harder getting this thing out the door, making it sound perfect than anything else he's ever worked on.
Yeah, this one and the next one that's coming out. But the parallel vocals is a parallel compressor.
Yeah.
And let's see, we have different settings for male, female, group vocals, attack, release speed. There's like a constant in there which you can dial in really easily. And if you're looking for that present vocal sound, I mean, this is money. I mean, this is it. And some people I think already have this one. It's been out for a little bit, but coming around the bend, we're going to give you a code to give everyone for the EQ 540, which again...
oh, that's one you were talking about the other night, too.
Yeah, there's a revision going on. I thought I'd have it by today, but it's that one I've spent years trying to get right.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really good. But anyway,
well, if you need
today
anybody
is the,
to test it for you.
There you go. All right, you got it, baby. Use the code. Use the code. So here's the code that you can get right now, so you can hold that up.
Oh, yeah. Let me get back to the two-shot, as we say in the video business.
Now, do not check out unless it's $0 for this plugin. Do not check out if they charge you. So that's the plugin, and that's the code, Taxi 2024. How's that?
No space between Taxi and 2024, correct?
That's right. And if you flip it, and if you miss it, if you're watching it on tape,
I don't want to confuse
delay.
them. Remind me, I'll show this at the end of the show.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, I'll show this again midway through the show, because not all students show up at the beginning of class, so I've heard. It's true. Some people show up, they're tardy, Rob, tardy.
Someone I know, perhaps?
Yeah. I asked Rob to get here 15 minutes earlier than normal today, because number one, he always shows up late, and number two, I had to tweak the green screen. Luckily, he's wearing black, which the green screen likes.
Listen, I came here 3 minutes to spare. What are you talking about?
And if you look carefully, you can see in the green lettering. I've had this issue when I wear my Miami sweatshirt. Sometimes you can see through and see the console behind it because it's green. Anyway.
What are we talking about today?
We're going to do a lot of Q&A today. But I want to talk about a couple of things just to warm things up that we talked about the other night. Okay, yeah, those are both, pick one that you like. They're... neither of them are amazing. They're some new brand of tea that somebody told me to try, and I'm trying it. It's okay. Anyway, I want to show you something that I know you've seen. Thank you. And I bet that hardly anybody, if anybody, has ever seen this in the audience today. So you look at this and go, well, that's a tape box. No big deal. Kind of weak, right?
It's a tape box. Let's see who's...
No. The T is kind of like...
Oh, it's all right.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a tape box, right? It looks like master tape, like a skinny little 2-track or something.
Yeah.
But you open it up, and inside... First of all, does anybody know what this is? This is an SSL floppy disk.
That's right. That's right. From back in the day.
And look at this. This is the track sheet. Whoa. Yeah, it's for a group called The Breakers that I produced and I think engineered most of the stuff back in like 1986. Wow. 1986, Rob.
I have a whole storage locker full of some of these.
But here's the interesting thing. Look what it says down there. Wendell snare. You know what that was? Wendell. That was Roger Nichols' drum machine, Wendell, that he brought one by. He just showed up. I met him once at an AES.
You triggered a snare?
Yeah.
I love it.
And in 1986, I triggered a snare. And Roger Nichols just showed up one night, walked in the control room while I was doing this project. He goes, "Oh, hey, I know you from Spars. Is Danny Gelman around?" And I said, "No, actually, he's off tonight. He's our head tech." And he goes, "Well, here, I got this drum machine that I built. It's called Wendell, and I want you guys to have one to try out." And he left it, and he never came back.
You still have it?
No. Somebody in New York has it, or New Jersey. And sadly, Roger Nichols passed away a few years ago. And here's the other interesting thing on this.
You got a lyric sheet, I want to point out. That's very cool. Oh, this is good stuff. This is memories.
My production notes, probably.
Nice. Oh, look at you. No, I got to see this stuff. Okay, there's the arrangement written out in blue Sharpie.
Yeah. There's stuff with my handwriting on
I love it. Let's go. Let's roll up our sleeves.
Anyway, sadly, the guy who is like one of the two main guys from the group passed away a couple of years ago. Healthiest guy I've ever met in my life, would run miles every day and dropped dead of a heart attack. I mean, the guy, I think, was like a vegan and ran all the time. But here's the interesting thing, is if you look at the tape box label, up here you'll see engineer, MDL, that's me, and next to it is JN, who was Jay Newland. You know, Jay Newland was my assistant on this. He went on to become Nora Jones's engineer and / producer. He was the engineer on her first hit. Arif Martin was the producer. Arif got delayed like an hour or two late to the session, and Nora said, well, let's just roll tape, Jay. And so she said, how was that one? And he went, good, let's try one more. And went, good. They got a take that ended up being the record, and Jay was credited as producer, co-producer on it. So the thing is, I'm basically responsible for his Grammy, because if I hadn't if I hadn't trained him so well on the breakers thing. But here's what's interesting about
I think you need to send him a telegram.
Yeah.
Saying, hey, bud, about that Grammy.
He probably wouldn't even answer my calls. Anyway, here's something you've never seen before.
I've seen that before.
This is a 24-track, half-inch digital master tape. Sony, for about 5, 6, 7 years, made a machine called the 3324, and then they came out with the 3348.
And the 3348 HD.
Which was about half the size of a dining room table. It was a big-ass machine. And
Big bucks.
Yeah, they were a couple $100,000 piece, something like that. And they didn't sound terrible, but they didn't sound great. They had no warmth whatsoever, but the top end didn't sound horribly digital, as digital machines were prone back then. But the interesting thing is, I'll pull the tape back out, you could edit this tape with a razor blade, which was one problem that everybody had with digital, because there weren't any, Pro Tools didn't exist yet. You couldn't easily edit audio, and because this was linear, as opposed to having stuff that you could, copy and paste and move around like you can in a DAW, you had to cut this tape with a razor blade, mark it with a grease pencil, and you would take the chorus out from take 2 and replace it with the chorus from take 3. That's what you did.
Well, that's something I didn't know you could do that with those tapes.
Yeah, absolutely. I might have been one of the first people outside of the Sony factory. Gary Rosen brought this machine over, an old mutual friend of ours, and showed me how to edit on it. And on this session with the breakers, I was actually editing takes with a razor blade, not just dropping leaders in, but actually editing stuff, because it had a tiny little audio track on it, so you could roll it over the heads going So that is a 24
What was the sound it made? That one, yeah.
Yeah, it sounded like taking a balloon with a wet finger and rubbing it on there. Now, okay.
Now what are we going? Do we have more?
Yeah, so
we got a 2-inch 24 track.
Yeah, this was an artist named Ira Marlowe that I engineered and produced this for DreamWorks in 1998.
So fast forward.
Yeah, fast forward 12 years. This is what a typical 24-track 2-inch tape looks like. So the digital one was a half-inch. This is 2 inches. Wow, Ampex $4.99.
Yeah, you could cut it +9 on that. You could cut hot.
Really? +9? Wow.
I think that was the pitch. I never did. I always cut it +5.
I was a +630 IPS guy myself.
Over 250 nanowebers per meter squared?
I don't know. I let the tech department do the tape machine alignments.
Know your alignment.
Yeah. I could do a repro alignment. I never did a record alignment. I could never get the AS. Remember, you and I were working on your stuff at Synchro Sound, in Boston. Yes. What was the guy? Roy, famous engineer producer.
Oh, Roy Thomas Baker?
Roy Thomas Baker did the Cars. It was their studio, private studio, but they would rent it out sometimes. And Rob was doing a project. Yep. I was pushing buttons, and we went to that studio. Honestly, it sounded terrible. The control room was high. You had to look down into the studio, which was a little inconvenient. But they had an MCI 24-track, and Roy Thomas Baker didn't like to adjust the, not the azimuth or the zenith, what do you call it? 1K, 10K, 100 hertz, and whatever.
You never ran tones to align the tape machine?
No, he ran tones, but the one where you would adjust the
bias?
The bias.
Okay.
So the bias is how much, basically, what the frequency and the level of how much it excites the magnetic stuff on the tape, right?
Yep.
So Roy Thomas Baker, you remember, we brought the tape from Howie Schwartz in New York in, and the guy puts up on the machine, and I said, well, we are going to be doing overdubs and stuff. Aren't you going to tweak the bias? And he goes, the bias is tweaked. I said, no, I'm sitting here watching. The bias isn't tweaked. He goes, yeah, RTB likes me to just leave it turned up to 10. So that's how the Cars, if you listen to the snare drum on the Cars records, that's why they sound so top-endy. It's because of that tape machine having
He'd be underbiased in that case. Then.
Well, whatever it was, all I know is it was no bueno, as you like to say for me. I'm trying to do your stuff and impress you with how hard I'm working for you.
No, I'm with you there.
And
hey,
whatever
man.
went in the microphone, through the speakers, into my ears, onto that tape machine, when I hit playback, I'm sitting there going,
it didn't sound the same.
No, it didn't sound remotely the same.
I'll tell you what, I will tell you that you used some there was some triggers that we did for the cymbals or something.
Yeah.
And we used some sample, and I played that back at home, and I thought that was the most beautiful sound ever, and I never was able to get it back. I don't know what we used at that time. I'm sure you don't remember, but maybe that's part of why it sounded so good.
We overdubbed cymbals. Did we trigger them?
Well, we ran some. We did record, and then we ran it through. It was an old Roland sampler when they first came out, and we then sort of triggered some stuff. And I remember it just had such a great sound to it.
Wow.
But who knows? I don't know. It's a lifetime ago. But yeah, bias is an important piece of the. But who am I to argue with? Roy Thomas Baker.
Yeah, he was a big deal at the time. I hope he's still alive and making records.
Got to be in the Hall of Fame if he's not already.
Yeah. Who else did he do? Did he do Queen as well?
I don't think so.
Anyway, yeah, Roy Thomas Baker. Okay, so anyway, yeah, Rob and I, the conversation started the other night at dinner, and I want to start there, and then we're going to move on to your questions, intersperse stuff we may ask each other. But I said to Rob, I've never, and I've mentioned this before to you guys, I've never quite gotten a bass sound that I really liked. A couple times I got really close, but there were still other things, like the bass on Intervisions by Stevie Wonder. At the time was groundbreaking, sounded amazing. Elton John's bass always sounded really good. And I would hear mine and just go, It's like I love the rest of the mix. I love my balance. I love my panning. I love my reverbs. I love my vocal sound. And the bass was just passable. And so Rob said, what did you do to record your bass? And I said, I would take a direct box. Usually I would try and get my hands on, bare minimum, a Countryman direct box, which was kind of like the General Motors of direct boxes back then. If I could find something a little more esoteric, I would use it, at least check it out. And then I would take an Ampeg bass amp. At one point, at Howie Schwartz, we had one
Ampeg, there it is.
One of Jerry.
Hello.
We had Jerry Garcia's Ampeg bass amp.
Yeah, and probably a B-15 flip top or something, one of those guys.
Yeah, it wasn't all that big. It was about this tall off the ground, and it was like a couple feet high, maybe almost 3 feet, whatever. I remembered that it had a thing, an Ampeg, where the Ampeg logo used to be that lit up. It was like plexiglass that was etched from behind or something.
Oh, those are good. Those are the solid state ones.
Anyway,
those are tough to find. Yeah, I know
this
those.
one, they took the Ampeg logo off, and it had Jerry Garcia's signature etched into the thing.
Nice.
So Howie Schwartz bought that at an auction, and I tried getting the sound using that amp with an RE20 most of the time, putting that on its own channel and just probably compressing it a little bit. And then same thing, I would put the direct box on channel 1 and probably run that through an LA2. I would roll off extreme bottom because I found that it made other stuff mushy, especially the drums. So like anything, I might use a high pass filter so that anything below 100 was knocked down considerably. I might boost, I don't know, 2.5K, to get a little bit of finger action in there, and that was about it. But I never, ever liked my bass sound. And when I would mix, I would spend an inordinate amount of time trying to get the bass sound good. So Rob starts laughing, and I said, why? Tell him why you thought that was funny.
What did I say? I liked your bass sound.
No, you said you were laughing.
I said I hate the RE20. That's one of the things.
Yeah, we'll talk about mics we love and mics we hate in a minute. But you said nobody even does that anymore now. And I said, what, they just combine 6 samples? And he goes, yeah.
Some, but it's better when it's just one, frankly. But no, I mean, I think, it's funny because when we talk and I talk to other colleagues, everybody should know Barry Rudolph and his work and his writing and his reviews. If you don't, Barry's another guy that belongs in the Hall of Fame. So Barry recorded Hall & Oates, Sarah Smile being one of many that he did, and he also did Pat Bennett's art, among others, but those are two just come right to mind. And he told me he used a lot of SM57s like for the whole drum sound or something, and I'm like, oh my god, an SM57 in his hands sounds really, really good.
Yeah.
But for some reason, for whatever reason, when I use them, I'm just not pleased with it. And in an RE20, when you use it, you find a way to make it work. But isn't it funny how 3 different people can have 3 different approaches? And that's one of my favorite records of all time, Sarah Smile.
Yeah. Great record.
Oh my God, it's beautiful. And hey, listen, it's a good thing they didn't hire me for that one because I'd have probably used Fet 47s on the toms, like you hate.
Right, so. We were talking about this the other night, and he said, yeah, I used Neumann Fet 47s on the toms. And I went, are you kidding me? I had 2 microphones that I really could barely ever use. I would use them if I ran out of other microphones. They were like okay, fine, I'll use it. Yeah. And a Fet 47 was one of them. There was nothing I could use that on where regular 87 didn't sound better to me. I did have a Tube 67 in my room for a while in Fort Lauderdale. That doesn't get any better than that. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe a Tele 251. But anyway, and the other mic that Rob loved was...
C12A.
Oh, yeah, which a C12A, that's like somebody... That's a Ferrari.
Smoking. Yeah. Great microphone. Beautiful microphone.
I owned one for about 2 years. Had a band client, and the guy in the band had extremely wealthy parents. For one of his birthdays, they bought him a C12A. And he ultimately, sadly, got way into drugs and ended up being institutionalized. And the day before he checked into the place, he said, look, I'm not coming out anytime soon. And I want you to have this because I know how much it means to you. And he gave me a C12.
Where is it?
I was so broke I had to sell it to eat. I sold it. I want to say...
Oh, no. But you know what? I've done that, too. And I can't be mad at it. And you know what? It's funny because Willie Nelson, I saw an interview with him with Carson years ago or somebody, or Jay Leno.
Yeah.
And they asked him, I heard you sold Crazy, right? Crazy.
The publishing?
Yeah. I think he sold it, he said, for $50 or something.
Oh, my God.
And they asked him, did you ever regret it? And he said, no, because I needed the $50 at the time, So, okay.
He probably bought weed with it.
Well, I don't know, but I mean, it's a great thing. I mean, we wrote so many hits, and sometimes we do that. this business is not easy, you know. And if you needed the $50, you need the $50.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I sold the C12A, I want to say for $5,000 or $5,200 back in like 1979 or 80.
I'll give you that for it now.
Yeah.
And
that microphone sounded like butter.
Yeah. Yep.
Silky on top, ballsy on the bottom, just right in the middle. Perfect.
Yep.
What other microphones do you absolutely love?
Ooh, depends on the application, you know, but if I were to list my favorites of all time, you mentioned the C12, 251, Neumann 47.
The FET 47?
No, the Tube 47. I like the FET 47 on toms. I like 67, the Neumann 67, of course. I love M49s and 50s. Strings and rooms, those are great. I like the C800G, which is beautiful for modern type vocal. That's used quite a bit.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, the C800's it's about $10,000. I don't know.
Who makes it?
Sony.
Oh, the one that's got the cooler, the little
the heatsink.
Yeah, heatsink on the back. I know what that is. All right.
That's very nice. Sheps. I like, I'll tell you what's really great, and I have 3 of them, and taxi people may want to check these out. It's the AKG 460s. Now, those are small diaphragm condenser mics, and you can pick them up for $300-400 a piece now.
Okay.
They're really great for cymbals, overheads. In terms of stuff that's under $1,000, I mean, that's probably the conversation. What great mics are there under $1,000?
Yeah.
I love those. Pick them up used. And I like the C214, not the 414, not the 314, the 214.
Which is like a stripped, it's a 414 capsule with less, like it doesn't have...
Accoutrements? Is that the word you're looking for?
It's exactly the word, accoutrement. Yes.
So
it doesn't have like variable polar patterns, things like that.
Yeah, it's a cardioid mic.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like any of them. It's not like they took a 414 and then made a 314 and then a 214. And they're only a few $100 too, and that is a very useful microphone. I mean, it's...
What kind of stuff do you use it on?
I've used it on acoustic guitar a lot. I've used it on vocals in a pinch, and it sounds great. It's really bright and airy on the top end, but not in a harsh way.
Yeah.
I love those microphones, actually. They're actually really good. And if I had to, if I had to take something like into a hotel room or going on the road, like for a few $100, that's the mic. Yeah, really good. Not a lot of people know about that, but I think it's pretty cool.
I think AKG gave me one to give away on a TAXITV about a year or 2 ago, maybe actually 2 or 3 years ago. And I wanted to take it home. I didn't want to give it away, but I did the right thing for you guys.
We use those on a lot of, I have, I want to say I have 4 of those. I fell in love with it, and I bought like 2 or 3 more, so I have 3 or 4 of them.
Yeah, the 214's an AKG. It's like the less expensive cousin of the 414.
But I don't like 414s that much.
The 414 is dangerously bright, and if you don't make good choices in what you use it on, it will sound dangerously bright.
And there are eras of the 414. So we started with the C12A, which looks like a 414, but is not.
Right.
And then I went to, one version of the 414. Then there was the low noise version of the 414 EB, and then it changed in the 70s and 80s. Oh my God, I can't keep track of them.
EB2L1 or something. Yeah, I can't keep track. They all look very similar, almost identical.
Yeah, they look similar, and then they went to different types of switches, and they all sound different from one another. So that's, that we could take up the whole hour on that. And I'd probably need to look at some documentation to see that I get my facts right, because I read quite a bit about it, and there's a great article. I wish I could remember where I found it. But it showed the history of the C12 and 414.
Kind of a timeline of them?
Yeah, it began with the C12, C12A, 414, and so forth. And there's a really nice description of what the sonic differences are over time with each revision. And that's, they're very different from one another. Anyway, and then you have the gold C414, right? Mark II or something.
Yeah.
And they're all very different. Yeah. They're great mics, by the way, but I don't know. I love them on percussion, but maybe I'd choose something. No, I love them on percussion. Sometimes I think we talked about I'd put it as a second mic on a snare.
Right.
Or on a tom. Depends on what the song is. And
I used them.
Cut a lot of vocals on them too. Actually, now that I think about it, it's a useful mic.
I recorded a lot of my high and mid toms with the first version of the 414 that came out after the C12A. So it would have been like
those are really warm and beautiful. I had two
that
of
was
those.
Like a 1972, 73, 74 vintage.
Those are big bucks. They're very warm. They don't have a lot of top end on them. And the pair that I had. But those would be nice on tom, on toms.
I loved it, man. I would scoop out a little low mid on it and boost +2 around 8K, maybe depending on how the drums were tuned, maybe down as low as 5K or 4.3. And I would hear it in the control room and go, that sounds better than if you were standing 2 feet away from the drum. It just sounded like a record instantly. And drummers always walked in my control room and went, what'd you do? It was the 414s.
Well, Michael, what I did is I opened my computer and I called up Superior Drummer or whatever.
I've got to say, Superior Drummers among them. The drums sound great.
There are a lot of good samples and stuff out there. There really are, and it's frightening.
It is. And I want to talk about another mic that I'm sure we've spoken about before, and then we'll jump into some questions. I see they're starting to pop up. The SM7.
Yeek. Someone's used the word yeek. Less than half the price of a 414. Do I like Warm Audio's copy? Oh, look at these. Okay, I can't wait to touch on these. Come on.
All right.
Bring it. Let's go.
Okay, the Shure SM7. When I was still working at Criteria, which would have been 74, 75, 76, somewhere in that range, I remember that we got a couple Shure SM7s, and Barry Gibb tried singing some vocals, and then went back to an 87. Yeah, I know, Barry Gibb.
Oh my God, could he not sound great on the mic?
He could have used a sphinctophone. It would have sounded beautiful.
Oh my God. What a voice.
Anyway.
What a writer.
But did I ever tell you my Barry Gibbs, I stopped him in the hallway story?
No, but come back to that because I want to hear about the mic.
All right. The SM7, it sounds fine. They're everywhere now because of podcasting, and they look cool, and I think people are buying them because they look cool, and they've seen famous people like Joe Rogan use them. I can get the same mic as Joe Rogan for $500, $600, $700, whatever they cost. And I could never get a good sound on those things, and I wanted to use it because it looked cool. But you have to use a cloud lifter with it to get the kind of level and get above, well above the noise floor and stuff. So I don't know. I'm not a fan, although Shure sent me like a podcaster version of it that I tried. And for some reason, it would only go to the right side. It wasn't coming up mono or dual stereo. I just plug it in like any other microphone, and it would only appear in my right speaker. So I don't know if the
world-class engineer can't figure out how to do.
No, I think it's a badly wired XLR cable.
It's like me with the remote control. SSL, 100 channels, I got it. Remote control, can't figure it out.
Same thing here. Yeah. I'm totally with you. All right, so let's grab some questions. I'm going to go with Riney Beer because he was the top of the list here. Question: Avantone and Telefunken quality mics? Avantone?
Avantone. Yeah.
I don't know that mic. Rob, take it.
Never used it. They make good. They're good company. Telefunken's a great company. Yeah.
Telefunken. They were like the first German microphone. Anything built with a tube came from Telefunken from Germany, like 2-track tape recorders. Radios, home radios were made by Telefunken. Shortwave radios were made by Telefunken. That stuff's all German, and it all, I think, and every engineer I know would say, yes, Telefunken, Avantone, I don't know anything about it. And Telefunkens won't be cheap, by the way.
I think they have, they've come, they've got some great old vintage mics that we would die for, right? So, the 251 being one of them, I believe. I think that's Telefunken 251, and the Elam 251 is what I believe the actual number is. But they have another whole line of microphones, including handheld mics now. And I have used a couple of the handhelds. My daughter used one back in the day.
Yeah.
And they were all good. Yeah, they were all real good.
Can you describe Kirk Franklin's process of composing? That's a great question. Hey, Alex Dillon. By the way, I just saw you in the member deal stuff that I was editing on Saturday night, 11:43 p.m. Why I was working on Saturday night, 11:43, I do not know. But, dude, you are taking off. I am so incredibly happy for you. So, yay for that. All right, Kirk Franklin. Rob was kind enough to invite me. He had an extra ticket for the Grammys this year, and I went with him. And frankly, I'd listened to some of Kirk's, maybe 6 or 8 of Kirk's songs over the years because Rob worked on them, and I love to listen to Rob's work. I've never seen Kirk in video. I've never seen him live. Dude, if you ever get the chance, even if you don't like modern gospel.
Oh, my God.
See him live.
He's so good.
He's a rock star.
No, he's a special guy.
He is. So,
I have no idea how he writes the songs he writes. I think he is one of the most special people I've ever met.
Yeah. Gifted.
I would walk, he's gifted, but that's not really what I mean. I would walk through fire for him.
Wow. He
is a very special person. And those songs are incredible. I wish I knew how he could
what's the
write.
video you sent me about his dad? There was some good...
Yes.
What was that called?
A Father's Day story.
A Father's Day story. Google that. It's on YouTube.
Yes.
Kirk Franklin, Father's Day story. You have some Kleenex handy, number one. It's about him finding out who his real dad is. And there's quite a bit of footage in the studio with him.
Yeah, there are some. Yeah, there's real footage there.
Yeah,
the cameras were rolling, and but he is just a genuinely good guy. I would love to. I could talk for the whole day, our whole session here today, about how kind and generous and talented he is.
I'm going to tell you something that I haven't told you.
You love me?
He loves you. I love you, but he loves you. When
he does.
You and I were walking down the hall, like heading for the pizza place or something, at the what used to be Staples Center. I don't even know what the hell it's called now.
Yeah.
And Kirk came flying out of a door and was going to whiz by you, and you went, Kirk, and you guys hugged each other. His face was looking at me over your shoulder. Mm. Genuine love.
Oh,
the look on his face when he wrapped his arms around you.
Well, these are personal things. Let's not get too heavy. But yes, I do.
Is there anything you want to tell me, Rob?
No. No, but he is truly that guy. I mean, and I think it's not just me. It's everybody. He treats everybody so warmly. And there are a few people in my life that I feel that I'm blessed to be around like that. And that is one of the true blessings, I suppose, of being in the business and meeting such good people. Yeah, I mean, I'd have to really reach for a lot of words.
Pinnacle.
He's certainly no one better. There was nobody better.
Seriously, I am not kidding. If you get a chance to see him live, I think I saw him do 3 songs at the Grammys.
Oh my God, yeah.
It's like better than Mick Jagger. I mean, him on a stage, the way he moves, the way he conveys the lyrics, the meaning of the lyrics, he is literally singing from his toenails, through his heart, through his soul, and out of his mouth, and you know it.
You do.
It's incredible. Alex Dillon also wants to know, how'd you mic Kirk Franklin's choirs?
Oh, that's a great question. Another thing that I would like to do is I will throw some love towards his engineer, Mike. He is the guy that records all that, and he does a tremendous job. So I have never recorded Kirk's choir. I have been there when it has been recorded.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that his engineer is brilliant, and maybe you should have him on one day. How about that?
What's his
Let
last
him
name?
Havens.
Okay.
So he's great.
Does he live in Houston, or they?
And his other engineer, Trey Nagala, is another
Do they
guy.
do the stuff in Kirk Studios in Houston?
Yeah, he records in Houston, but he's been out here.
Where does he do the choir? Or different choirs?
When I saw the choir was at Village.
Oh.
Yeah.
The big room.
One of the big rooms, yeah, which is a tremendous studio. I love that place, and
Yeah.
Jeff, I love the owner too. He's a great guy. But maybe that would be something you could ask them. So I won't
All right.
share their secrets, but I think they'd be happy to.
Absolutely. Do you know if they live out here?
That neither of them do, but they will
I could
be
do
in
remote.
town time and time. Yeah,
I can do them remote as well. I would love to know. I've mic'd a choir twice in my career. Remember, I don't know if you ever saw church, but in Fort Lauderdale, there was a big, huge church that had the second largest German pipe organ in America. I can't remember the name of the church, but it's Commercial and A1A, or Commercial and Federal Highway. And I once got to do a gig there. 80-piece orchestra and 100-voice choir all together.
Oh, that's a high pressure gig.
But you know what? Here's the ironic thing. I've told this story before for those of you who joined me on the Quarantinis during the lockdown, and that is that somebody there was pressuring me to mic everything. You know, like every other pair of violins had to have a mic 3 feet above it. I'm like,
Yeah.
I may be 25 years old, but I know enough already because I worked at Criteria to know that I'm going to be better off with a pair of stereo Sheps mics. Sheps microphones are kind of the Porsche of microphones. Mm-hmm. I took a stereo pair, the coincident pair where you rotate the capsules on axis on the one mic. And took a little, it was like a little shock mount like that thing, raised it up all the way to the ceiling in the church using a piece of string or something like twine, and then had my assistant lowering it slowly, while, and then all of a sudden it got to a place, boom, magic came out of the speakers. That was the sweet spot.
Yeah, usually close to the conductor's head, I would imagine. But yeah, the thing is that it's funny because, I could talk about that miking stuff for days too, which I love. And I would say that, more mics, more problems, It generally be simple about it, It's not, don't overcomplicate. Another guy who I think is another colleague of mine and a friend, has become a friend, is Steve Genowick, who's a great recording engineer.
Don't know.
And he's worked with Al Schmidt for a long time, for many years, and he was Capitol's main guy, I think.
Wow.
I would say. I think it's fair to say.
And
he's just won a Grammy for a big band recording, and his work is tremendous, And his approach is different than mine or yours, but it's
I no longer
brilliant.
have an approach. It's been that long.
Well,
that tape I had, 1998, was the last time I touched a console, I think.
Yeah, everybody brings their own element to a recording or a mix or whatever, And I love all of these guys and their work. And another guy is Dave Way. He's another guy that I've admired for many years. And, Tony Shepard's another one. I got to work with him after just last year for the first time. We've known each other for decades, but engineers don't usually get to work with other engineers at the same time in the same room. But I was producing something and with Nate and Kaylee, the Highfields, my partners, and I decided, wouldn't it be nice to have one of these guys come in? And we had another one come in, and we got to hang out, and it was tremendous, It
wasn't killing you, not turning knobs?
No, I loved it. I loved sitting back and just listening and, being more the producer and not have to worry about that stuff, and had the joy of working with these guys. and seeing what great professionals they are, and just it made my life so easy. It made my job easy, and it was fun. Wow. And that's one of the things I think, we lose these days because we're all isolated in smaller studios and we don't have the interaction with colleagues.
Yeah.
And
yes, I'm so happy you're saying this.
I miss that so much. And when a studio, if you're in the Village, for example, or Enterprise or Capitol, you have different studios, and you go to the lunchroom, or you're crossing one another in the hallways. There's always somebody that or an artist that oh my God, look who's walking towards me,
Yeah.
And you say hello, and there's a magic in that. There's a feeling when you walk down the halls of Capitol, and you know who's walked those halls, and I think it's almost a reverence, I would say, in making sure that you have to up your game, at least to me.
I could not agree
mentally,
more.
right?
Yeah.
I want to respect those that have laid the groundwork and walked those halls.
And pass it on, but sadly we get less opportunities to pass on because you're right. Everybody's isolated, and
yes.
Now there's a plug-in for everything, and there's samples for everything, and then there's going to be AI-driven plug-ins. There are already a few, and
that's why these, by the way, if I can interrupt, that's
yeah.
why this stuff here is important, because it gives us a chance, to share some things, where folks don't necessarily get the opportunity to hang out and talk and learn from one another. It's a big deal to me. It's very important.
I literally couldn't fall asleep at night waiting to go to work at Criteria the next day for that very reason. Not only was I learning audio skills, but I was learning the psychology of making records. I was learning how to act like a grown-up in a room.
How to be a professional.
Yeah. And it all starts with wrapping a mic cable. At Criteria, your first hour of the first day, they give you a mic cable and say, you wrap it like this.
Where is it? Give me a mic cable. I'm ready to wrap.
All right.
Come on, let's go. Let's go. Give me a mic cable. I wrap my electrical cords, my hose outside. I wrap it up the same way. Yep. You bet. Okay, we're going to do a cable wrap here. Oh, my God. Over and under, baby. Okay, there you go. There's one. Here's two. You go up the other way. You go this way. You go this way. And this way.
See, that's funny.
Come on, why do you do that? Because when you throw the cable, it
unfurls without kinks. So, yeah,
so good.
I learned this.
Learn how to wrap those cables, folks.
You take your index finger and your thumb, wrap. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you toss that cable a 50-footer across the room, it will be a straight line.
And if you don't,
you don't work there anymore.
If it don't, it gets knotted up,
I want to finish the Barry Gibb thought. Although
come on, Barry Gibb, back to Barry.
Okay, so just like you said, at Criteria, the Bee Gees were there every day. Clapton was there. All these people, they wouldn't just come in for an hour or a day or a week. Mm-hmm. They'd be there for a month or two or three. Mm-hmm. So I would see Barry Gibb all the time. Probably my first week there, I stopped him at the coffee machine or something and said, "So Barry."
So you just said Barry.
Yeah, because you all see each other, and even though I was the lowest man in the totem pole that week, he was still a courteous, nice guy. I go, good morning, chap, or whatever he said to me. And,
hello, mate.
Yeah. And I said, because I'd already asked Tommy Dowd and Reeve Martin how you make a hit record. And they said, they looked at me like I was an idiot. And they said, well, you write a hit song. And they were right. And so I took that information and asked Barry Gibb, how do you write a hit song? And he looked at me like, I can't believe you're under this roof and you don't know this. He looks at me and goes, emotion, mate, emotion. And he shook his head and walked away. And he was right.
No, I mean, but it seems so easy for him to say.
Yeah. All right, let's do some questions here. What's your favorite studio monitor? That's a great question.
No question, easy to answer. Yamaha NS10s.
Really?
Absolutely, from day one. I used to use, I heard that Hugh Padgham used AR, acoustic research monitors. I tried them early on, And I ended up going with NS10s. And when I first started, I listened to nothing else. I had them in the studio. Every studio had them. But I bought them for my home, and I actually even put them in the back of my car. So that my old Honda. So that all I would hear is NS10s. I just wanted to know those speakers just intimately. And I will never change. People have offered me, oh my God, so many great speakers worth insane amount of money to endorse them, but I can't because I'm never going to change. I love Yamaha.
So
NS10s.
you realize these, which I still haven't played for you because I don't have them dialed in yet. They do have variable tone controls on the back. They're selectable switches. But I saw Clear Mountain had these sitting on his console in his SSL studio.
That was just to throw you guys off.
and the guy from Sweetwater was interviewing Clear Mountain. He goes, you could have any monitors in the world, and I see you've got like Atoms up there, Genelex, whatever. He said, but you've got these Yamahas, and I've never seen this model, and they're MSP7s. And I went, well, I believe Bob, when he actually was the one that turned me on to NS10s back in like 1984. He was mixing the Pretenders at Howie Schwartz in the room next door to the one you and I worked in. And I walked in there, and he had these speakers, these white cones. I said, what are those? He goes, the only speakers I like, Yamaha NS10s. He brought them with. So we got them at Howie Schwartz, and I got used to them, and I like them, and I trust them. But these were designed by the same guy that designed the NS10s, and then they didn't sell. They didn't take off, so they quit making them. So you can only buy them used. So I looked online, and I found this pair was listed for $800 for the pair, used, but in brand new condition with the boxes.
Okay.
So I called the lady up. She's in Miami. She's a big-time vocal coach. She's in the band Boston, not a side member, but she actually is the keyboardist and sings vocals in Boston. And she goes on the road with Barry Gibb doing all the Streisand parts when he tours. And she's got a vocal studio, and these were in her vocal studio. So she said, I know about Taxi. I would love to be a Taxi member. Give me a membership, and I'll give you the speakers if you pay the shipping. So I gave her 2 years. And
fair deal.
The imaging on these things...
I'll check these out, but I'm still not changing.
Yeah, I'm not asking you to. They're mind-blowing.
I'll tell you what is, though, it doesn't matter that I use NS10s. I don't think that's the, necessarily like the keys to heaven. I think that you just have to know what the speakers are telling you. It can be anything. If you like them and you know them and you get good results, I think that's fine. I don't. Yeah, I mean, for me it was NS10s.
Super Blonde wants to know, hey Super Blonde, haven't seen you in a bit. Pop vocals are all auto-tuned now. Do I need to auto-tune my vocals for an original Black Sabbath style metal track?
Well, let's start with Ozzy Osbourne. Let's start right there. Ozzy.
Yeah.
I don't think they used auto-tune on him.
No, they did not.
I do not use auto-tune, by the way.
I think they use
extremely rare that I use.
I think they use Quaaludes on Ozzy.
They may have.
Yeah, but no. Really, you never tune or rarely tune vocals?
I didn't say that. I say I rarely use auto-tune. So if I have to tune something, I tend to go to Melodyne. And I only tune what's necessary, and I try to be gentle about it. But most producers and people, hey, listen, great singers really nail it. And but if you need to adjust it, do it. I think that's fine. If you feel like that's, in the style and going to serve the song and the performance, go for it. Nothing wrong with it.
Let's see. So Fretman says, I like my Yamaha MSP7s. Cool. I do too. I just can't get there with the variable tone switches and back. I do have them up on stands with some ISO going on, but they're spread too far because they're on my desk, which is an old dining room table. So they should be about 1.5 feet closer together. And yeah, anyway, I'll solve that problem. But the imaging and the punch on the bottom end is mind-blowing. Magic sauce. I'm looking for the word question. Oops. Question for Rob. What do you think of Warm Audio's copy mics?
They look good. I have never used them.
Well, that's all you need.
I just, it's so, man. I've wanted to try them, though. I've wanted to try them because they look good.
I've got a friend named Ben who is like the endorsement guy at Warm Audio. I'll introduce you. He has been to the Road Rally several times. Warm Audio was a sponsor last year. They gave me something that I remember liking. I can't remember what it was, but they do have a good reputation with like real pro engineers seem to have a modicum of respect for what they do. Any comments on the recent AI-produced Randy Travis song?
No.
Any hint on how to consistently get tight low end? Well, that was my discussion at dinner on Thursday. It's like I could get a pretty good bass sound. I've never gotten like a holy crap, that bass sound's amazing sound, and that's what I want.
That's a good question. I think that it's funny. Like sometimes the bass, if I'm honest about it, if the bass is a little sloppy, I'm cool with it. It doesn't have to always be tight. I don't think we need to fit inside a rigid. There's a framework, but it's not really that rigid. Sometimes a dirty bass is a-okay. It just has to serve the song. If it feels good, just leave it. And one of the things I think, when I was younger, I think I learned it pretty quick, but it didn't come immediately. And that is that, sometimes those imperfections are just fine. Not only are they fine, when you put it all together, it's, you can mix the life out of a song. You can overmix a song. And you can go for that bass and you can solo that thing and spend 3 hours on the bass, and at the end of the day, it is still not going to change the lyric.
Right.
I mean, and you better make sure that the rest of that sits right, because it's the whole enchilada we're looking at. And so many of my favorite records, I talk about Crimson and Clover a lot because I just love it. I talk about Pennies from Heaven from Sinatra and Basie, a musical first. That song is so great, but there's like a trombone guy that rushes a note, and there's some other things. But you know what? When you listen to that thing, it's like if I had every tool on planet Earth, I couldn't make it sound that good. I don't know why it's so great. I don't know why it hits me with such,
well, because Frank made every word sound like it came from his
and every
soul.
Musician and every microphone and the production and knowing when they got the take or whatever the case may be, it's all of that stuff. It isn't the bass. And sometimes, like there are records where the cowbell is way too loud, but it's interesting.
There can never be too much cowbell.
I knew you were going to pick up on that.
Of course.
A triangle, right? And so, I don't know. I think most of the bass sounds, if you're using like a soft synth or something, a plug-in to create it, well, those are pretty close anyway, and they shouldn't need too much. That's my experience. Yeah. But the other piece is I've always found that, when I was doing a lot of tracking dates, if somebody had a good instrument, let's say a Fender Jazz bass or something like that, generally when they plugged the thing in, it sounded good. My job is just not to mess it up. And sometimes you think, I got to compress it. Well, if you over-compress it, it's hard to undo that. Then you compress that bass, and then you got the kick drum, and sometimes it's not quite right. What is it? So I'm going to compress the kick drum. Well, that's not what the snare doesn't sound. I'm going to compress the snare. Let me EQ You get into the cycle of listening to individual.
There's a virtuous cycle and there's a vicious cycle.
There is, and what I'm talking about is vicious, because if you don't sit back and listen to the thing as a whole, we're trying to make a recording that is a unit that's cohesive.
The only person who'll be happy about you putting that much effort into the bass sound is the
guitarist.
By the way, Rob is a published author. He actually wrote a book on bass.
Well, and it's funny. I can't remember who it was. I'm pretty sure it was this guy, Larry Dunn. And I shouldn't say this guy because he was in Earth, Wind & Fire, the keyboard player. He wrote all these hits. And I will bet, I think it was, we were on a panel together and we got, talking one day. And he said that when Earth, Wind & Fire, now this is just secondhand and I don't want to, step on anyone's toes, but I found this to be funny. That when they were mixing, one day they had the guitar player control the bass fader, and the bass player controlled the drummer's fader, and the drummer controlled the vocal fader, and
That's
so forth.
Freaking funny.
And the next thing you know is the fader started going down.
Right.
You know? Now, I don't know if he was kidding. I don't know what this, but I can see that, you know. But if you give the bass player the bass fader and the guitar player the guitar fader, then they get pushed up, right? And on the other hand, if you give them someone else's fader, they tend to go down because they focused on their own instrument. Well, as a mixer, you know, I want to make sure everybody's happy in terms of that. But it has to feel great. And sometimes, you know what, something needs to be muted. We talked earlier, you mentioned recording strings.
Yeah.
Or a choir.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like all those microphones, they're there for the mix engineer's benefit, but oftentimes I'll mute some of them, or I won't use them. Sometimes I'll tuck them way back. But when it comes, sometimes the decision is to mute it because it creates space too.
I'm a bad guy. You know why?
Because you just use the stereo pair. I get it.
Yeah, because I would put those microphones out just to make the players feel important, especially first and second chair fiddles. If they didn't have a
fiddles,
mic on, that's what I call them. If they didn't have a microphone 3 feet above them, they felt like they had a piece of crap engineer.
I want the spot mics. I want them over the pairs of each stand. But you know, let's say I get guitars, and there's a 57 mic'd on the amp, and a 47, and maybe I don't know, a ribbon mic or something, and I get 3 mics on one cabinet and 3 on the other, and it's like, whoa, my God, I can't use all of those mics. Rob, why does the guitar sound so big? Well, because I muted half the mics. You know, sometimes if you listen to Led Zeppelin and you hear that guitar, it's like it's not 10 layers of guitars and mics, and it is
probably a 57 right up against the grill. And
it isn't. Oh, don't tell me that.
87, 3 feet behind.
Oh, no. Now you're killing me, Laskow.
I know.
Oh, my God. I'm going to look that up and see what they used.
How many passes will you have a singer sing full passes before you begin the small fixes? I can answer that. And you're going to say, it depends.
It depends. I'll tell you what I learned very early on is record that first warm-up take.
Yep. Especially when you tell them, I need to get some levels and dial in your EQ. Just run it top to bottom. Don't stop for anything. That's always the first best take.
You know, I had one person say to me at the end after I said I've got my levels, "Oh no, honey, that was the take. Bye-bye." Well, let me tell you, luckily I recorded it. But it's important to get those takes and get that vibe. It's about the vibe. And when the vibe is great and they've hit those moments, yeah, you know, there may be fixes, that's fine. But I love to I'll tell you a quick story, and that is with Johnny Mathis. I got to record him. Now, if there's ever a kind,
if I may interrupt,
guy,
Johnny Mathis, Stevie Wonder, Ray Charles, like the greats.
Yeah. So back to Johnny Mathis, who I'm driving in, and I'm like, "Take me now, Lord." I mean, why am I so lucky? Because I'm about to record his.
Because you worked your ass off. That's right.
Well, I get there, and he's saying, I was beside myself at how unbelievable he was, and I remember feeling as though I better be very smart and precise at any comments I would give. Okay. And as you can imagine, a lot of times, especially young producers, and I wasn't the producer, I was recording, but I was the only one in the room at that time. You know, a lot of people want to give comments to seem like they know what they're doing. We've all been through that. Maybe you don't know what to say, so you say something and it's stupid. Like, I'm trying not to do that. And he asked me my opinion, and I said, oh my God, it was phenomenal. Why don't you come in and listen? And he came in and he listened. And he said, I'd like to try another one, and he did. And every decision he made was right on the money. And I find that the greatest singers have that ability to self-produce because they're so aware of what they're trying to do and communicate. Now, that's not always the case. And sometimes you need the producer to give that input. And I've talked to so many producers over my career and I've been in the room as these things are going down, and each person has as different an approach as the next. And sometimes it's their personality, the producer's personality, the artist's personality, how you deliver a message to somebody to keep the feel and the vibe. Sometimes it takes a light hand. Sometimes you have to be poetic. Sometimes you have to be assertive. Sometimes you have to be motivational. But at all times, you have to know when you get that take.
Yeah.
And when you get it, you got to not lose it, and you got to ride it and be aware of the moment. And it's not so easy. I can't say I've done it perfectly every time. I don't think anyone can. But that's it. How many punches does it take? I don't know. But you got to pursue it until you get it.
It depends on the song.
Mm-hmm.
And the tempo has something to do with it. The slower the song, the easier it is to find the emotion in it, I always found. And just like you said, you can overmix stuff to death. You can overpunch to death.
You can overpunch, you can overtune, you can overcompress, you can over-EQ, you can undercompress, you can under-EQ, you can do it. And that's the balance. I think that's the art that we're all trying to feel, is how do we take this idea that's the song, put it down on tape, let's say, or in the computer, and try to bring the very best out of it. We're really serving the song. The artist is, the producer is, the mixer is, the engineer, and there are a million decisions that go on every
And it's never the same thing twice. Even with the same artist from day to day. You learn and you build a rapport with them and a little arsenal of tricks that will make them happy and comfortable. But it's still not going to be the same. Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. That's exactly right. I couldn't agree more. And I think that when we get more experience, instincts advise us. And we can sense things. When someone enters the room, maybe the vibe changes a little. We got to adjust. We have to go with the flow. If somebody's excited, if there's a moment that people all feel brings an energy or get excited about, then
we should do this at the road rally. We should do one of those like I did with Ken Collay on a Saturday night, starting at like 6 or 6:30. Let people bring pizza or sandwiches and beer in the big room, the main ballroom.
Pizza and beer. Let's go.
And let's just hang out and have these discussions, because this is the stuff that people don't learn about being isolated in home studios. And I will literally go to my grave being grateful for what I learned at Criteria. I hate to keep harping on Criteria all the time, but that place was, you learned all this stuff. After Criteria, when I was at Triad, I was working with Neil Young, and it was just Neil, myself, and my assistant. And the first 10, 15 minutes of the first day, I'm like, hey Neil, strum your acoustic. He had this beautiful Martin. Strum it again. I'm working, setting the compressor, dialing in the EQ. And after about 5 minutes of pissing him off mildly, he looks up at me and goes, hey man, you know what? You worry too much about the EQ and the compressor. I forbid you. He literally said the words, I forbid you to touch an equalizer or compressor for the rest of this record, which turned out to be Comes the Time. And it was tough. And he would walk around with his acoustic strapped on, and my poor assistant would have to follow him around with an 87 on a stand to try and get it, because you never know when he would hit lightning in a bottle. But there's a book about Neil Young's recordings. It's called Shaky. And he says, I went to this new studio in Fort Lauderdale with a couple of kids working there, and he's talking about me and Paul. and he said it was really laid back, I'd come in at 11 or 12 and work till 6 or 7, very normal hours, no big druggy things, blah, blah, blah. He said, but in the end, it sounded a little muddled. and I got to tell you, when my partner called me and said Neil Young is standing in the lobby, he wants to do a record, I went, oh crap. I loved working with Neil.
Bring it, I'll do it.
I loved working with him at Criteria with CSN and CSNY. Mm-hmm. And I loved working with him solo on what became Comes a Time and Hawks and Dove and something else. Anyway, I learned the single most important thing, which you're dancing all around the campfire on it, which is he said to me, don't worry about the EQ and don't worry about the compressor. Worry about capturing the vibe of my performance.
That's it.
And it hit me in the face, and absolutely.
I mean, you can EQ my voice to death, and I know you tried. It's going to do nothing. It's not going to get us where we want to go, And you can take, McCartney or let's say Adele or somebody, and at the end of the day, you put a cheap microphone in there, and it's going to have everything it needs. Now, does that mean these other things are not important? It does not mean that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, a great singer and the microphone's going to fall in love with that voice. I mean, I just listened the other day to Teddy Pendergrass, who I love, one of my favorite singers of all time. Maybe I don't know if he's the favorite, but he's in the top 5 for sure. And, I mean, just don't mess it up. Don't mess up Marvin Gaye. Don't mess up any of these guys. They're just, and there are some singers that are breathtaking, it's just the microphone falls in love with them. Mm-hmm. And, anything that I could do sometimes, it's beautiful because, you speak, when we talk, you know better than this. And that's why I say, no, I'm talking about all these things that embarrass me, because I know that with their artistry is so incredible that it's not necessarily what I'm doing. It's sometimes the hell out of the way, and just let it go. And it's okay to be that guy. It's cool to have a light hand. It doesn't mean you always have to be. Some things need to be produced heavy, but in my life, sometimes, I think less is more oftentimes.
Get out of the way until you're needed.
Yeah, sometimes it's best to leave the space. A very famous producer just 2 days ago said, I like to play the space, and that's probably comes from Miles or somewhere. But it's a very important idea, and it's stuck with me. Like, I try to remember all those moments when people say these things, and it's really true.
Are you good to stay here? The show would normally end at 5:40 or at 5:30, but I want us to go 15 minutes longer because there are a lot of questions coming in.
Question:
if you could only own one reasonably priced mic, what would it be?
Well, C214.
Okay.
Go spend the $300. Be done with it. Move on, and you can use it on guitar.
Can you discuss using plugins versus outboard gear? Any faves, or why one is better than the other in certain categories?
That's a funny thing, and people talk about this forever, and people ask me about this all the time. There are no pieces of analog gear that sound like their digital counterparts, because analog gear, if there's a tube in there, no two pieces of analog gear sound the same. But I think the modeling is tremendous. I think a lot of companies are doing good modeling, and it gets you a good part of the way there, which I think is helpful. And I think it's fine. And I think they're all just good tools. How are you going to use the tools? I mean, a guitar in my hands is not going to sound the same as a guitar in Andre Segovia's hands or something.
Or my hands.
Or yours.
You'd get Louie out of me, bar chords and all.
Well, listen, make sure you get the minor chord right, at the end of the day.
There's a minor chord?
So at the end of the day, they're all great tools. And I will add one piece, because a lot of people at Taxi ask me about, where to spend your money on outboard gear. Mm-hmm. And I believe if you're going to spend it, it's the microphone, it's the preamp, and maybe a compressor. That's it. Once you get beyond that, it gets into some taste stuff, and now you're opening up a bigger world. But
do you know Steve Klein? He was chief engineer there. He actually wasn't chief engineer. I know Steve Klein pretty well. I actually produced a record called Wild Oats. God, it was terrible. my fault. It was the first thing I ever produced for a label, and Steve, I didn't want to mix it, so I went back to Criteria with the record and had Steve Klein mix it. But Steve Klein, he was 2 notches above me on the ladder at Criteria, and he lives here in Southern California, lives in like the valley somewhere, and has a shop that builds acoustic panels and does control room design stuff. Good guy, smart guy. Do you know what he used to do, which is brilliant? Because we both lived in Miami at the time. He would read the newspaper, look at the obituaries, and if he saw somebody on Miami Beach or one of the wealthier neighborhoods, he would write down the name of the deceased person if it was a man, and he'd wait about 90 days, and he would find the widow's phone number.
Oh, Jesus. Can we not do this?
No, it was actually...
I hope there's a punchline, Jesus.
He loved Macintosh tube amps, the ones with the blue meters on it.
Yeah.
And he would call the widow and say, I'm so sorry that you lost your husband. He was very respectful. I'm so sorry that you lost your husband. Did he have a stereo? Does it say Macintosh with the big M? And I went over to Klein's house one night after work at the studio. In his basement, he had these speakers that were like 6 feet tall with tri-amped Macs on each side.
You know, Michael, you are going to get assassinated someday. You're going to get assassinated for telling these stories. Oh my
Klein
God.
would tell this story. He was always respectful, and he paid fair market price. It's just you couldn't find them used, the good ones with the tubes and the blue meters. Nope, they were starting to go solid state. Nobody wanted it.
Oh boy.
Did I say Steve Klein? I meant Steve Fine. If you had one desert island piece of outboard hardware, what would be that piece?
One piece of outboard hardware. Well, you can't get anywhere with one piece. But I'd have to say, you know, does a computer in my DAW count? I suppose you need that, right?
No, let's.
Is that a trick question? So
No.
you need a mic, a preamp, and a compressor. I'd put the compressor third, the microphone and the preamp you got to have. Unless you have an interface, we still need a microphone, and that's where everything starts, is at the microphone. So I mean,
So what would your desert island mic be?
My desert island mic would be probably a Neumann Tube 67.
Oof. Do you know?
Because it's that good.
Valgaray at Sound One in Encino did like the Linda Ronstadt records, the ones that count. Not that they all didn't count, but he did Linda Ronstadt. Oh God, I can't remember. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for being a friend, Andrew Gold. Mm-hmm. And he has the Tube 67 that Linda Ronstadt used in his studio.
He's not using it.
He was here.
He's not using it. Bring it on, babe.
He did a TAXITV with me about 10 years ago. And I was like, can I just come over and look at it? Maybe hug it?
Hey, it's a beautiful mic. And I mean, you know, there are others that are right there with it, you know, but I mean, that came to mind.
I once used on this thing, I can't remember the name of the studio. It's where they did, no, not that thing. Anyway, this one. It was where they did the theme song to Friends. And I really didn't like the room all that much. And for the vocal, I saw a Neumann Hitler bottle, which was a nickname for a microphone because Adolf Hitler was seen giving speeches into it. It's the one that's got...
Looks like the blue mic with the...
Yeah, it's got a body a little bit taller than this with a little gooseneck, kind of an inflexible gooseneck that comes out of it like a little golf ball-sized capsule sitting on top of it, like a little Sputnik.
Those are big bucks. The tubes for those things are big bucks.
Yeah. So...
I've never even seen one of those.
I've seen one, and I said, I want to use it. And he goes... I'm sorry, I've got to tell you, no. And I said, is it broken? And he goes, no, it works great, sounds amazing. You shouldn't use it. And I said, why? And he said, because if you ever have to punch in this vocalist anywhere other than this room, it'll never, whatever you punch in won't sound as good. I didn't listen to him. We laid down the lead vocal. The artist got it in 1 or 2 passes, pretty much top to bottom, couple little quick fixes. And then, of course, he took home a digital copy of the tape and started playing with it on his workstation at home in San Francisco. And he called me up and said, I can't fix the vocals.
Wow.
So whoever my assistant was on that, Jeff somebody, Jeff Robinson, you were right. Here I am 15 years later, whatever, you were right.
Yeah.
When do you use compression? Boy, you guys are asking tough questions that there really aren't any.
I use it when I think it needs it. You know, and I don't just turn it. I think this is, the way I'd answer that is I don't just use it. I don't just use a compressor because it's there.
Right.
Right? I mean, if it needs to be compressed, I'll compress it. You have to let your ears be the judge, I think, above all else, And sometimes I'll put a compressor on and I get some benefit from it. And, but something's always lost. Something's gained, but something's lost. So if you start compressing a kick, you better look at the snare. You start compressing the vocal, and then you start compressing the bass, and the next thing you know, it's all, it all becomes compressed, doesn't it? When you start doing all of that stuff. Well, not necessarily. It doesn't have to be organic, and it doesn't. And sounds don't always have. You just nailed something, because sometimes as engineers we want it to be organic, but sometimes it's mess it up, right? So years ago, in about 1991, I was in the studio with the Calloway brothers, and we were doing a remake of Sly and the Family Stone, Family Affair.
Wow.
And Rose Stone came in to do the vocal, and the melody is, it's
Did
a
she
family
sing the
affair.
original?
She sang the originals.
Wow.
Right? And I was trying to get the sound, and I said, "Sweetie," and I said, "How do we, sweetie?" That's the second part of the story. The first part is I said, "How I
get canceled for that?"
I must have been 28 years old, and I said, "I can't get the EQ to sound like the original." I said, "How do you have any idea what was used?" She said, "Oh, honey, I just did this. It's a family affair." Where she sang it with her hands around her lips, and I recorded her. I said, "That's it." Here I am thinking EQ, compression, filters.
Why did she do it like that? Was she used to doing it live or something?
I didn't ask that question, but there was the sound. She probably just had a moment of whatever, and it happened.
Wow.
And I thought, what you do in that room between your voice and that microphone, that's an important thing. Now, if you go back there, it sounds different than up front. If you get really close, it sounds different. If you do this, it sounds different. I don't know if you can hear this, but it's different than this. It's different than this. And if you put, like we were talking about, those dampeners on the drums, or the toms with the silver dollars, it makes things sound a little bit different. If you put a wallet on a snare drum, it makes it sound a little bit different. I mean, all of these things are part of this craft that we've dedicated our lives to. But sometimes it's something that simple.
I lament that the craft is being lost, because everything comes, in the form of software with presets, and I haven't used a lot of presets because I just haven't used my DAW that much, but presets sound pretty darn good. But I know what to do with a preset. If I don't like something the preset is doing, because of my real engineering background, I know how to, it's missing this, or it's missing that, or I'd like it to sound more like that, and I can deal with that. Whereas, am I lamenting the loss of the art because I'm emotionally attached to it because I went through it, or is it?
No, I think you hit another great point. We should have started this whole thing like this, because we could have just gone for an hour. I think you're right in many respects, that we're anchored in this history that we have, and this love affair with tape machines and audio and recording and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
You and I and everyone who's in this business has that, but then as time changes, we adapt to newer technology, and I think it's fine. And I think it's great that you can have bits of both worlds, but young people are coming up with fresh ideas, and sometimes we can be anchored in the old ideas and resist it. And I've heard a lot of times at Taxi and other seminars where someone, well, don't you think the music of the 80s sounded so much better? Well, Not really. Like, I think it's pretty cool today, and I love what's going on. Yeah, I love Van Halen, and I love all of this stuff. I love the Beatles, and I mentioned earlier the Sinatra thing that was from the 50s. Man, they all have their place, and it's okay. And I like to embrace, the new technology and plugins and use it in my own way. And sometimes I'll get a record where I'll see a Pro Tools session and all the plugins that the producer used, and you can see there's it may be tons. Or there may be just one thing, and I'll say, well, that is really interesting what they did here. Now, they did it for a reason. Now, was it a mistake, or was it just in the moment of trying to get a performance that they exaggerated an EQ? I have to think through this thing before I make a change. And it happens in milliseconds. Like, I'll listen to, let's say, why are the backgrounds so pointed? Is it because it had to be that way to create an atmosphere for the singer? Mm-hmm. And if I say, I don't think so, I think it'd be better a different way, then I'll make a choice to either remove it or reduce it. But oftentimes, I'll hear something like, that's really clever. I never would have thought of that.
Right.
And some kid had this idea and did some reverb through delays with crazy filters.
Because he wasn't constrained by...
He wasn't thinking based in some old way of thinking. He's come with fresh ideas. And bingo, oh my God, I'm never going to forget that the music is evolving and it's changing, and I got to do the same.
I'm envious that you get to hear what those crazy kids do with your traditional background. Understanding the science and physics of audio, to me, is so close to my heart. I've literally told my wife on my tombstone, I want to say my name, Studio Rat. Because at my core, that's who I am. I would rather talk studio than look at porn or fast cars or whatever. I don't know. Whatever dudes do.
Is this thing recording?
Yes.
You've got to be kidding me. Bleep that out.
No.
Producer,
I'm trying to make a point there.
No, I got your point. Does everybody get his point?
Yeah, I mean, it's like everybody's got their thing. For hunters, it's guns. For car enthusiasts,
for writers, it's words. I get it.
Yeah. So for me, I could literally sit down and read books, interviews with engineers or mixers endlessly, because I have those moments like you just described where you get something and that kid did it, and it's like, I never would have thought of that in a million years, but now it's locked in my little vault of my brain, and I'll use some of it or all of it in the right context 5 years from now. It'll pop back into my head. So
I'll go one step further with that.
Yeah.
So Aaron, who my assistant, every Friday before he leaves, he will send me 10 songs that are in the top 10 of different genres on Billboard's charts.
Okay.
Of course, it's Taylor Swift, but who I love, by the way. I think she does great work. But every weekend I listen to what's going on. I know what the top 10 is, and I have my own Spotify and Apple accounts, and I listen to this stuff, and I love it. I really love what's happening in modern music. That doesn't make it better or worse. It just makes it different. It makes it different. My father had his sensibilities, and I'm, because I'm a professional, I got to stay up on top of the trends. I mean, anybody can balance a vocal, and when it comes right down to it, you want a guy that's going to bring something to the table, and maybe try something that's going to be innovative. But the world and music 6 months ago was so different than it is today.
Yeah.
Forget 6 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago. And I love listening to the new music. People say, well, do you think music... Somebody asked me earlier today about music. Don't you think, it's simpler? In fact, I did an interview this morning, and I told the guy he needs to interview you. I'll fill you in on that later. But he said, don't you think chord changes have become simple? Sure, many times they have, but not everywhere.
Yeah.
Not all the time. But I don't know if that's bad. If I love the song, I love the song. When I was a kid, I didn't think, what are the chord changes on She Loves You, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah. And I didn't care about, when I was hearing, the Eagles. I mean, the chord changes are great, but, I wasn't thinking about that. I didn't think they had to be complicated. I'm cool with it. When Doves Cry doesn't even have a bass in it. Do I care? No, I think it's cool, I'm fine. if I love the song and it hits me the right way, I think that's what. And I'll go even one step further and tell you something really silly. And I'm curious to know what you think. I'd be curious to know what the Taxi members think. But when I was a kid, my mother had a 1973 Le Mans, okay? And in the back, it needed like new shocks. It was suspension was all off, so it kind of sat down on itself a little bit.
It looked like she was doing a
I didn't want to say that.
Like 5 bales of weed in the trunk or something.
Not my mother, no. So that car, it had the AM, FM, AM radio in there, and my brother wired in the tape deck underneath.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, those were the days.
Well, it was originally an 8-track, and then it was a cassette. Okay. And the cassette, we were really screaming now. Like, we're talking, this is 1979 or 80, and it's a 73 Le Mans, and it has seen better days. And we had the cassettes, right? So the little cassettes, I would go over when I'd hear a song on the radio. I would go to my little Radio Shack. It was called Realistic. It was the company. And I'd put in one of those 3 for $99 cassettes. So they're like 33 cents each, of the cheapest cassettes you could buy. I'd throw a cassette in, and I'd hit record, and I'd hit play. And I'd record it on a little speaker and then a little device, a little cassette machine. And I'd take it and I'd put it in the car when we were going somewhere. I was driving somewhere, and I'd listen to the song, and I would enjoy the song with that type of recording. Right. But it goes one step further. I'd switch cassettes. I'd leave it on the dashboard. It'd be 100 degrees out. It would melt a little bit. It would warp, and you'd put it in, and it would go, and then it would get to the song. It would get to the place where it's good. I still enjoyed the song. Like, I wasn't freaked out, like, oh my God, I don't hear the bass. The bass is a little muddy on this thing. I wasn't analyzing that as a kid.
I'm surprised because you are extremely analytical. Probably the most analytical friend I've ever had. But
yes, but as a kid, and I think most people, we just listen and we enjoy the music. It hits us, and we enjoy it. And I don't think people are all that. When MP3s came out, everyone, MP3s suck. I'm fine with it because I like the song. It's really about, do you like the song? Yeah, well, sing me the melody. And people would sing you the melody. Well, sing me the drum part. Well, okay, not often. Mm-hmm. It's just that song, what does that song do for you? And I find, like, I think that kids are the same today. If they love the song, maybe they're more sophisticated. They're definitely more sophisticated in terms of sound quality, but you still enjoy the song.
I completely agree.
Okay.
Totally agree. People overthink that stuff. I had the same bewildered look on my face when people spent more time worrying about, I hear artifacts in an MP3. It's like, but I hear a great song.
Yes, and you can enjoy the song, but it's hard to go back in time now because we've studied it, and our job is to analyze. And then we've trained, and we've learned to play, and we've practiced 8 hours a day or more. And studied and done all of these things to develop our talent and our craft. But movies, when I watch a movie, it's like I'm still looking at a movie through the eyes of a child because I don't know how it's made, and I never want to know. There's an innocence there, and I think that when most people just listen to music, they're not considering all that stuff.
That's such a great point, because with movies we suspend disbelief. We get sucked in and we feel like we're in their life or in that room or in that story somehow for as long as it lasts. I don't know that we suspend disbelief because we don't have anyone listening to music. It's a little more visceral because there's no visuals. So you feel it and you hear it.
But I bet movie makers analyze when they watch. They couldn't possibly. I don't believe that.
Right. Did they use a crane for that shot?
Did they use a drone? Yeah. And when I hear music, I think of many things come in. Oh, that's really interesting. And effect, rewind it. Oh, that was pretty cool. But I'm no longer listening to it with the innocence that I did as a kid.
I lost that in 1976. I took the stereo out of my house and never moved it back in. I literally, I'm a victim of my career because I can't listen to music as a tourist, as just somebody who drives by and sees the beach and the palm trees, goes, oh, that's so pretty. I would wonder, what kind of palm tree is it? What's the water temperature? Yeah, that's how I am with music. I'm listening. I wonder if they used a dynamic mic or a cardioid on that hi-hat because it sounds really good. Oh, listen to that delay. Oh, it sounds like about 65 milliseconds, but if you listen carefully, it's going side to side very faintly. But you gotta look for it. I can't just. It's hard
No
for me.
doubt.
Although there's a song, I'll never find it now, but by the Bahamas, something or other, a band I'd never heard of. I Shazam everything when I'm watching TV. I literally watch TV with my phone in my hand. Library. Okay. I'm going to give you guys a song to check out. This Done Did Me No Good. Done Did Me No Good by Bahamas. Not the Bahamas. Bahamas. I'll play it for you later. It's so catchy. It's not a pop hit, but it's so catchy.
Well, listen to Louie Louie. You mentioned it earlier,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
right.
who's going to say that's a masterful recording? I am. I think it's great in all its imperfections. And listen to, there's so many songs. Just go back and listen to some great songs, and you realize, man, it's the vibe. It's the vibe. That's what it is. Okay, what do we have?
And Gloria Covington says, poor Michael. Believe me, I got into the music business. Well, you know what? I'm lying. Honest to God, when I started listening to the Beatles as a kid, I was so fascinated by pictures of George Martin and Jeff Emmerich sitting in there going, those guys get to tell those other guys on the other side of the glass when it's good or when it's not, what they could do to make it better. Because I'm inherently a bit of a control freak, he makes me look like I'm not even in the race. Rob,
I'm not a control freak.
No, you have a vision and you will go to the nth degree to accomplish that vision. But I never wanted to be a rock star. And for me, it was always about taking something and making it the best it could possibly be. And in order to do that, I needed to learn the craft because you can't just say, well, it should be like this. Well, how can I make it like that? You have to have that answer if you want to be that person in the room.
Yeah, you have to pursue it. And you're talking about pursuing excellence and being dedicated and all of the things that, you are. So over the years, whether it's, Picasso or Beethoven, I mean, we're talking about the greatest of the greats. Not only were they born with superhuman talent, they developed it and and they worked night and day on it, It's
I just
passion.
gave that advice to somebody, a budding young songwriter lady, and she's feeling pretty confident about her songwriting. I said, you need to learn craft because otherwise most of it, people aren't born with that gift. Very, 1 in a million maybe. But if you have the craft, you have the foundational tools to take any ideas you have and make them the best they can be. And I've learned that from other people, and I think it's good advice. Let's do a couple more questions.
Tips for loud voices. I sing loud. Just turn down the level of the preamp, and the microphone might have a pad. Put the pad on it. If I knew what mic you were using. But
Zen chief engineer's getting the stink eye from his wife because the kids are being cranky. What could possibly be more important than this? You know what? Invite your wife in. She'll let her develop a little sympathy for. Anyway, you guys.
We got to answer this one. What's on your plugins?
Yeah.
What's the difference between parallel voices and parallel vocals 3?
Ooh.
And what does the 3 mean? So parallel voices was the legacy version. And I didn't like the word parallel voices, so we changed it to parallel vocals when we upgraded the plugin to work with the more modern DAWs like M1, M2 Apple chips and stuff like that.
Do they sound like they're cousins or anything, or
they sound the same? But if you they can both be in your system if your system can use both 32-bit and 64-bit.
Got it.
So you can use them both, but they are not. But version 3 does not read the legacy information. It's different architecture, sort of.
What was so Rob has before I don't want to hang up or hit the off button and not mention this. So Rob is very generously giving 50% off of everything until when?
Till I forget that I put it up there. I turn it down. It'll be days, though. It'll be some days.
Okay, so today's
the end of the week.
End of the week. Yeah, let's say Friday-ish. 50% off everything at Final Mix Software.net or .com. Okay.
But if you're still watching the show.
Oh, yeah, if you're still watching the show.
Until 6 o'clock. We've got another 20 minutes.
6 o'clock Pacific time.
You get it for free.
I've got to show you something that will make you laugh. And I think in all the years we've known each other, I've never shown you this.
So now that he's turned the microphone over to me.
This is probably something that...
Let's see who we have here. Hold on, Michael. I'm busy. 1 second here. Someone said they're going to go cancel me. Oh, go Canes. Okay, there's...
We both went to the University of Miami, but Rob went years after I did. We never knew each other.
Are either of you guys guilty of placing a mic that wasn't actually on for vanity's sake? He did. I didn't. Are you kidding me?
No, I've done that.
I said you did. I wouldn't do that because I don't have the balls to do it. Let's see what else we got here. Go Dolphins. Oh, Christ, no.
I told you about the quadulator, right? The A&A quadulator.
Yeah, you can tell these people that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not making any more records anytime soon. Yeah,
hold on a second. Michael Laskow does not care who he offends. He does not care anymore. He's at that point in life where he's just letting it rip.
That's right. There's a great commercial for some company that buys out the rest of your life insurance policy, and a husband and wife sitting in their backyard, and there's these guys like miners underneath them in the dirt. They're pounding, going, you can sell your policy. And the wife goes, did you hear that? And he goes,
I don't hear anything.
I'm old. I don't hear anything. I laugh every time I see
I don't hear anything above 2K.
Okay. What
is this?
Is an 8-track.
That's not an 8-track, is it? Oh my God, it is an 8-track.
In the original wrapper.
It says 8-track on there.
It is an 8-track of the Wild Oats record that I did when I was about 23 years old. I actually co-produced this record.
Can I see that?
Yeah, don't tear the plastic.
No, I won't. I can see that. Oh my God, an 8-track tape.
When you start talking about leaving the cassettes on the dashboard, the 100-degree car, this is, for those of you who are under 60, this is before cassettes. This is how we got music in a car. This is
8-track tape. Yeah. Absolutely. I had the Chicago 5 record, okay, when I was a kid. And one of my favorite players is Peter Cetera, bass player.
Oh, I thought you meant Chicago 5, like the Bobby Seale and the gang. You mean the band Chicago, their 5th album.
Yeah, their 5th, they call it Chicago 5. And that 8-track was a red tape. It was a red 8-track, and oh my God, the hit was called Feeling Stronger Every Day. And we were going to the beach, and it's about an hour and 15-minute drive, and I drove my mother crazy. No, hit the next button. We had to go from track 1, 2, 3, 4, and then back around so I could hear that song again, and I don't know, she was ready to kill me by the time we got to the beach. Oh my God. 8-track cassette.
Led Zeppelin was on 8-track.
Everyone was on 8-track.
No, I'm talking in my collection. Led Zeppelin on 8-track, and...
Did you have the Grassroots? Did you have...
No, but I had
Stones,
American Woman by Randy Bachman's band. What was it called? Not Bachman Turner Overdrive.
The Guess Who.
The Guess Who, yeah. The Wheatfield Soul I had on 8-track. Crap, that just reminded me. I owe Randy Bachman a phone call.
Have him. Let's go.
Yeah, Randy is still out there playing. He's lost 2 brothers in the last couple of years that were both in BTO. And he is still out there humping it, and he's older than I am, probably a decade older than I am, but he is out there. He loves the road.
He's got to be in the Hall of Fame, yeah?
I don't know.
Should be.
Certainly in Canada's. I mean, he's like Daniel Boone is to American culture. I think they have Randy Bachman and Neil Young statues because they love those guys, especially Winnipeg. Both those guys are from Winnipeg. Mm-hmm. All right.
Someone just mentioned Joni Mitchell up there. I caught that, and I was at Down in Westlake.
Westlake Studios.
No.
Oh, Westlake Village.
Ken Calais and somebody and.
Blonde
played
hair.
me a
Yeah.
Nittany.
Nittany Paris, yes.
Ken played me a piece of a Dolby Atmos mix he did at Joni Mitchell, you know.
Yeah.
My God. You know, when I think about great engineers, you know, I should have mentioned him too. That's all.
Well, that's what we talked about at dinner. Let's get you and I and Ken on stage. When I had Ken on stage and we did the Fleetwood Mac thing, people loved it. But I think this kind of conversation at night with the lights turned down in the ballroom, everybody has a glass of wine or a beer and a pizza, whatever, and just hang out and talk artistry and audio, all that stuff.
I'm with it. Let's do it. I'd like nothing more. That would be a ball.
Call Ken. Here's a question for Rob, and then let's wrap her up. You mentioned not hearing above 2K. And Jess, but serious, after years working in studios with headphones, how do you compensate today for hearing loss of specific frequencies?
Yeah, someone else asked me about losing 2K. No, well, I mean, you know, so two pieces. So I've been really lucky, very fortunate that my hearing is still A-okay. How do you compensate for headphones? I do not mix on headphones. I will check it when necessary, but I generally do not use headphones. It messes me up.
And you monitor low. I've been in the room when you've been working.
Yes.
I couldn't work at the levels that he works at. It's like, even when my ears were still, 20-something, I never worked at levels that low.
But it wasn't always that way. I'll tell you that I have two volume levels. One is stun, okay, which is loud. But I don't do that often. I have to feel the music a certain way, especially, periodically I have to turn it up. But I won't do it for super long periods of time. Generally, the level that we're talking is about the level that I'm mixing at, and I'm able to dial in the levels that way. In fact, in my home studio when my kids are asleep, that's when I'd get most of my vocal rides done, and I love it because it's quiet. There's nothing going on in the world. I can focus on the vocals, and I do my rides. I do the detail work with it very quiet.
I was just getting an inbound call. The ringer was turned off. I happened to look at my phone. It was an 805 number. I think it was Ken Calais calling us.
Get him. Let's do it.
Well, I don't want to call back in case it's not Ken, but I know he's got an 805. Anyway, Andre Stepanian reminded me, Rob had an incident when a fire broke out in the apartment of a pretty famous pop star back in the day. And I've heard this story before. He was recounting it at dinner the other night.
No, we're not talking about this. We are not talking about this. No.
About the fire? Just with people getting in elevators in the middle of a fire?
That part we can talk about.
Yeah, that part. I'm not talking about anything salacious.
No, there's nothing salacious. It's just I don't want
to make it salacious.
We could. Yeah, don't get into an elevator in a burning building. We went down the stairs, of course, but the smoke came up, and I thought, I'm going to die, right? So I don't know why we would talk about this other than it was with, a very famous artist, but hey,
you were crawling, right? Like everything you've ever heard about being in a fire and the smoke being so bad you can't see your hands is all true?
It's all true. Yeah, and it's hot. The smoke was hot. It was one of those things. And but I guess if we talk about a life lesson, even the people in the elevator knew they shouldn't be in the elevator.
And they still went.
And it was wild, and getting them out and doing that stuff is, I don't know, it's weird, sometimes in those moments, yeah, I don't know. No, I don't really want to talk about that.
All right. Can't force you.
You won't.
There's an important question here, which will definitely be the last one. I think Martin Gravel is pushing Ken Crombie up to the front of the room here. When downloading Parallel Vox 3, I'm getting the message, it could harm my device. Do I want to keep it?
So that's a common Apple security setting. You just need to follow the instructions. It's not going to harm your device. I'm not putting any malware in there for you. It's fine.
Yeah, the only malware in there is it'll make everything you mix sound like gold.
That's right. That's right. It's called Auto Mix. All
right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I love having Rob on the show just because.
Does anybody like this stuff when we like ramble like this? Like, I want to know. Like, I feel crazy. Like we should be more, I don't know, answering questions or something. But
it feels good to us. We enjoy it. It's long.
Well, it's your show, so we can do what you want.
I can, but I try to give them what they want, and I think we should reach out to Ken Clay. The three of us should do something like this. Spend a couple hours, and we give some real information, and we give the vibe of the industry, I guess, the old guard vibe.
Well, I don't know, Bob. I think what I would hope is that it's some little. Maybe if a few people get just one or two little things, wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
And we're still as enthusiastic today as ever, I think, when you think about it. Even though, life takes different turns. I'm still... You mentioned that you'd get up and you just look forward to going in the studio. Same with me still.
Yeah.
I love it every day. I mean, it's just working on music, whether it's a professional setting, an amateur setting, or a hobby. I mean, isn't it great, though? It really is.
I said this to you at dinner the other night, and it took me 40 or 50 years. I've been in the industry for 49 or 50 years now, like legitimately in the real music industry. And I love making records more than I love music. And I think that that's because I have to listen. I don't want to, but I listen so critically that I can't enjoy it as a tourist, like I said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I love the craft. I love the power of your imagination and having the toolkit that anywhere your imagination takes you on a musical level in the studio, that we come from an era where we've got the toolkit. We don't need a plugin. We don't have to use 3 plugins in concert. We don't have to use 6 kick drums to get a sound.
We don't?
I don't. I need 1 microphone, 1 equalizer, and maybe a compressor, maybe.
What's better than 6 kicks? 5.
1. Anyway, that's what I love about the studio, is I think it gives me a sense of mastery and control, knowing that what somebody else hears in their head, or what I imagine in mine, or we come to some meeting of the minds together, that I was able to produce what it was that they heard in their head, or we came up with as a group of people in a control room, and do it pretty quickly and do it effectively, sometimes surpass everybody's expectations. That's your ego, my ego talking, but I always felt like I was flying an F-16 or something. It's like this, I would imagine this must be what it feels like when a pilot knows his aircraft well enough that he can do crazy rolls and stuff and know that he's not going to kill himself by doing something stupid. It's just audio generally won't kill you.
Generally not, but the drugs will.
That's right. I never inhaled, ever.
You and Bill.
Right.
And me.
Anyway, thank you for doing this.
Oh, Laskow, good to hang again.
I love it. Yeah, I could go another hour, but I think our guests are ready to go have dinner and take care of the kids, put them to bed, all that kind of stuff.
And write a song.
Yeah. Is next week Memorial Day weekend? Or are we?
27th is Memorial Day. Anniversary.
I don't think we're gonna have a TAXITV next week.
Mm-hmm.
Monday the 27th is Memorial. Yeah. So we will be back. Wow. On June 3rd. Our next show will be on June 3rd. If you have any comments or questions, additional questions that we didn't get to earlier in the show, please put them in the comments below. And I promise you that no later than this coming weekend, I will look at the comments and I will pick up the phone or text Rob and say, there's a question you should really answer, and that's it. Thanks for coming, you guys. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
And
all right.
we will see you on June 3rd. And thank you for giving these guys all the free download. And we will let you know when the 503 comes out. Is that what it's called? 540, 503? What's the number on it?
Oh, Laskow. End the show, will you?
Okay. Bye.
Nice fade.
I've been